Hello, hello. Welcome back.
Hello, hello. And it looks like my dog is joining us.
We always love the more than human.
Oh,
Fantastic.
yes, yes, yes.
How are you going today? You good?
Oh, yes, I'm doing well, and I think that I'm looking forward to. I think this is going to be sort of like a joyful confessional. That's what
Oh,
we're going to be
wow.
doing.
Okay.
Yes,
That
yes.
sounds very good. Very good. So I'll just so what will happen, and welcome to everyone in the room. This will be a real wonderful treat for us. We have Dr. Denise Chapman, who's at Monash University here
Yay.
in Melbourne, NAM. Denise is, I believe, going to do some performance work around her written practice, creative written practice, poetic practice. And so I will shortly leave the studio and allow Denise to perform her work. And I think there may be some visuals too, Denise, perhaps. So
Yeah.
thank you, everyone, and I will take my leave. And thank you very much, Denise.
Beautiful, beautiful, and hopefully Jeff is in the background because I think I will have a few uh, uh, videos that I want to be able to also show, and if needed, I can wiggle back and forth, and that's not a problem. To all those that are out there, thank you so much for joining. I am only able to see myself, which is interesting because this is an opportunity for me to share a little bit about what I do. And as a critical autoethnographer who is also a poet. In doing so, I think the best way to do that is to go and to share my first paper that I wrote. That's a critical autoethnography, and then give a little bit of a performance with some aspects of that, and then also wanting to do perhaps maybe a few other things. Okay, so but before I get started, I must acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands we are all gathered on today. I am currently on Burrung country. I would like to acknowledge the Burrung peoples, their community, and their stories of knowing. Because this knowing is a knowing that we all must center should we truly want to be free. All right. So um, it's interesting because when I first got here to Australia, I had a moment where I I said to myself, yes, I know what my research is and where I'm focused and what I'm going to be doing. And then I found myself like a person flying through space, a person who got swept up in a hurricane, a person who felt that she was no longer being viewed in ways that she knew, that she understood. I no longer felt the sense of humanness. I no longer felt the sense of um, of being that I understood and knew as a child. And so what I'm going to do right now is to share with you this paper that is entitled The Crooked Room. But today, really, this is all about wading in the words, wading in the words that I'm going to be sharing with you. And to do that, just prior to sharing that paper, I want to sort of activate through an incantation, something that I've been doing lately and feeling really good about it because it activates my ancestors. So let's get started. Heard Grandpa's steps this afternoon, walking between dim rows of cotton and collards. The leaves clapping and waving up against his knee and tattered jeans. I spoke to him. He spoke to me. Grandma's whispers in the background while drops of rain came down like glowing joy. They smiled at me, waving and smiling, saying, "You have our love. You feel it. They see it. Dat be Galagichi, bin ya, got ya, wrapped in haint blue. Hot don't marino. Hot don't marino. Hot don't marino. Sang. Wade in them words. I said, wade in them words that heal us. Wade in them words. As a black woman troubling them words. This is my incantation. I wade in dim words, 'cause they say dim words, our words, heal us, be us, free us. My mama and my mama's mama and my mama's mama's mama waded in water. I wade in dim words. These are my words. Now, I'm going to transition to, I believe, and I'm hoping, Jeff, are you able to share, or do I need to share that those videos? You might be able to tell me in the chat. Let's see. I'm hoping that it may be the case that I have to. No worries. So what we're going to do is one of those things, as we activated that space, I'm going through and I am getting a video, and let's set this up. This video is one that allows me to share a little bit about my experience coming here to Australia, coming here as a Black woman, as a migrant, as a woman whose bones still bear the scars of her ancestors. However, those scars not being seen by the people around me. Instead, I found myself in a crooked room, and we'll talk more about that, but I want to first share with you this video. Let's see if we can get it going. So I'm going to share screen, and here we go. All righty, and we're just making that a little bit bigger, and we're going to go ahead and press play. Bread and butter now, before and after. Bread and butter now, before. 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 Bread and butter. Bread and butter. Feel the water rising round me, currents flowing, ankles ain't free. My watch is buzzing, telling me breathe. Eyes inhale, mouth can see. Past tell me be nice, sit pretty. Words stuck in molars, Now, cavity, minds tumbling rocks, synapses flee. That's the way my Thursday be. Bread and butter, bread and butter now, before and after, bread and butter, bread and butter, bread and butter. Dim folks feed off black women's corn rows, braided beds of wisdom, tilled streaks of pain. When they done picking all my fruit, stripping the bark off my back and belly, when the water goes dark and my Jan first black eyed peas done wore off, I unbraid my kitchen, not to comb it out, but to feed from the seeds of Dolores and Dorothy, Rosalie and Cheney. Then I watch for their whispered roots to grab hold of my mind. My seeds see and foresee my seeds are story that nourishes me. It's these stories I must speak to field a place for me to stand, to write self far away from the 40 acres and stolen mule land. These seeds tell me, take up space. They say, I must scatter them now before all my braids unravel. Scatter them now before the dust comes. Scatter them now before dim seeds are lost. Scatter them now. It don't matter if the loam is gray. Bread and butter, bread and butter, bread and butter, bread and butter. Now I'm going to just stop my screen share. There we go. And I'm back. So that was a piece that I put together in that really invokes that experience, the initial experience coming here to Australia. In sharing that, you can see I've put a layer of my poetry on, as well as some digital. Creative, or what I call digital quilts, where we're lying, putting layers and layers of, much like a quilt, video and imagery and animation together in a film. And that was also a piece that was shown at the Coolahan Center, or Coolahan rather Gallery, here in Melbourne, in Nam. And I was really, really excited to be able to share it, but really, really nervous, because I felt that it was sharing pieces of me in the crooked room. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to now start sharing a little piece of me. And this is a critical autoethnography paper called The Crooked Room, Intersectional Tap Dancing, Academic, Performing, and Negotiating Black Woman Migrant or Immigrant. And this is from the handbook, Wayfinding and Critical Autoethnography. And let's just get started in sharing this. And as I do this, I'm going to stop, and I'm going to go and weave a few more bits and pieces of video in there. So bear with me. This essay, this paper that I'm sharing with you right now, discusses my experience as an African American woman, an academic working in a white privileged Australian university, trying to survive a mental onslaught that owes itself largely to the failure of white people in Australia to acknowledge their white supremacy. I reread and rethink as I'm saying these words, this opening sentence, and know that Australians are generally going to deny, that they're in denial about their own whiteness. Now, that's not to say all Australians, but at the core, many are in denial of their own whiteness and its privileges. Um, and and this is important to note because in the university space, this is especially prevalent. In fact, I would argue that it's at the heart, the university space. Schools in Australia are the heart and soul of disseminating that white supremacy. Now, I've passed, in going through more than a decade, 14 years of my experience being here in Australia within the university space. I wrote this autoethnography, this critical autoethnography, as a way of being able to show this passing through several phases of survival, a culmination of this. Of what's happening, a composition of poetry about self, allowing me to express myself, right, in new and exciting ways. Poetry has changed my experience of being an intellectual in Australia. So, why poetry, you might ask? I know for myself, I was saying the same thing. But I've always been a storyteller, always have. And this, in many ways, and I'm off roading. This, in many ways, was an opportunity for me to explain things in ways that use metaphor. Because how do we describe things like love? How do we describe things like hate, war, famine? Often we describe it in ways using metaphor because it's so difficult to describe. But art is healing. Art supports survival. Toni Morrison notes in her essay, Rootedness, the Ancestor as Foundation, that art created by African Americans is needed as it serves as a space of healing for Black people. Morrison points to the importance of art as a means for, quote, telling people something they didn't know, how to behave in this new world, how to distinguish between the good guys and the bad guys. She states that art is the space for, quote, the effective and participatory relationships between the artist or the speaker and the audience. Morris stresses that African Americans need Black art. We need Black art to enlighten, to help us enlighten. It will enlighten and make one profoundly feel. Furthering this point, Audre Lorde, Sister Audre, in her book, Sister Outsider, posits that art, specifically poetry, quote, is not a luxury. It is a vital necessity of our existence. It forms the quality of the light within which we predicate our hopes, our dreams towards survival, and change. First made into language, then into an idea, then into more tangible action. Poetry is the way we help give name to the nameless so it can be thought. That's the end of that quote. Now, while Audre Sister Audrey Lorde, and Sister Morrison, Toni Morrison, stress that art is that space and place for illumination and survival. I put forward that both authors also emphasize the importance of art tapping into our ancestors, that we can tap into our ancestors through art as a spiritual reservoir, that it's an ancient consciousness. The art allows us to find a way forward. This way finding for survival, change, and enrichment. Toni Morrison notes that Black artists should blend the acceptance of the supernatural and the profound rootedness in the real world, at the same time, with neither taking precedence over the other. This blending of ways of knowing, this tapping into, y'all, tapping into that spiritual world and real world at the same time. Okay, that spiritual world and real world at the same time. This is an Afrofuturistic thing, right? And this is a tradition that the first enslaved Africans brought to the American colonies. That's what they did. Religious traditions like the ring shout were means for enslaved peoples to collectively reduce their life burdens, to reduce the performatively, and to performatively generate hope, creating these beautiful hopescapes, a way finding faithfully for survival. Now, Morrison notes also that this way of knowing was discredited knowledge. Okay, knowledge not valued by the colonizer. I'm going to go off road and just for a moment and say that the work that I do with poetry, I've found the challenge of being able to defend that this art, this work is real research, and that it does have impact. It does have impact. And in fact, I would propose that it has even more of an impact in that it allows us to create these spaces for change and possibility. And going back to the paper, when we make a deliberate effort to weave together that which is unseen with the present, the relationship yields the surreal wisdom. Surreal wisdom that is deep, generous, and protective. Lorde, not Audrey Lorde, and I could say Lorde. Okay, Audrey Lorde states that each one of us, quote, each one of us holds an incredible reservoir, okay, she's preaching here, of creativity and power. It is dark, it is ancient, it is deep. By leaning into those dark, fantastic narratives, our imagination for what is possible in the world is expanded. That's Ebony Elizabeth Thomas says that. Expanded wisdom comes when art is used to tap into forces unseen, a deep spiritual connection. Kim McMillan argues that Black women's history and survival have depended on this ancestralness. Art that entails entails a spiritual consciousness, a way of being, a way of seeing, a way of enveloping yourself in power, okay, that the power, or rather seeing that power of enveloping oneself in that spiritual consciousness. Black art that embraces the spiritual consciousness supports Black women in this way finding our way through the challenges, finding our way through what we're going to talk about as the crooked room. Specifically, they're orienting and navigating through the sharp, angled, interlocking intersections of race and gender. Y'all, I am trying to get through this intersection. This intersection. Black feminist theory has long continued the history of tracking these interlocking oppressive systems impacting women. This matrix of domination, also understood as patterns of domination that marginalize, continue to constitute the Black woman as subordinate. However, making visible the complexity of Black women's oppression, that's what we're trying to do right now. Okay, that's what I try to do in my art, through poetry, through critical autoethnography, because it's emphasizing that the Black in Black feminism is challenging. Okay, now Melissa V. Harris Perry. Let me repeat her name because, oh, beautiful. Melissa V. Harris Perry puts forward that when Black women, quote, confront race and gender stereotypes, which what I experience here, which many Black women at that intersection experience here in Australia and across the world, Black women are standing in a crooked room. Melissa Harris Perry says, standing in a crooked room. They have to figure out which way is up. They're bombarded with warped images of their humanity. Some women tilt and bend themselves to fit this distortion. The crooked room lends an appreciation for the public behaviors, what you see, and the political tactics that we see in Black women. Okay, what might appear as tilted behaviors on the part of Black women can alternatively be viewed through a window of a figurative crooked room as a result of piercing, painful intersections endured by Black women over time. It's in our bones, okay? The following, what I'm going to be sharing here, this following critical autoethnography works uses poetry, spoken prose, and digital art to explore ways of knowing and being and wayfinding. That crooked room that Melissa Perry talks about, Harris Perry talks about, mirrors the oppressive systems of racism, sexism, and xenophobia within the academic setting. And if I could go so far as to say that not only do I feel often that many Black women feel that they are navigating a crooked room and look like to the outside that they might be crooked, right? It's in understanding and writing this poetry and talking about this out loud helps me to think. Now, at this point in the paper, I should share that this was the beginnings of me realizing that my transition here to Australia, that I was in a crooked room. And I felt this sense of that I had nothing worthy of saying. Why would I think that? Why would I think that? I have strong histories, okay, of survival. Why would I think that? Let me continue in the paper and tell you how I felt at the time. As I type these words, as I say these words back then, I can feel the walls of the crooked room whispering, "You can't write. You cannot write. Men write. White people can write. Immigrants only whine. Black women only write short pieces in online magazines for other Black folks. My computer is even telling me that I'm not writing Australian enough, as I see so many words underlined in red dots. I hesitate to write about my experiences as an American academic in Australia because if I publish, which I did, I will only be obliged to include my publications in my signature, that email signature, like a productive academic in the faculty. And will the title of my work put me at risk? Will I be at risk for further marginalization? I mean, marginalization with an S that went to a Z, an S. I mean, an S, a Z. Which one is it? I don't know. Perhaps the crooked room is making me stutter and hedge. What if my discussion about my lived experiences, my analysis of oppressive conditions and power in my context, in this university space, in this space that feels like a plantation, along with my inclusion of theory, do I challenge the dominant, dehumanizing structures that Robin Borland and Mark Orb say critical autoethnography should be and do? What if my poetry is not seen as evocative enough, scholarly enough, Black enough, gendered enough, representative or representing enough of my lived experiences, as Sandra Faulkner and Rich Foreman and Laurel Richardson shared? What right do I have to critique the social context, some might say, or power relations that impact my experiences? My mind floods with the phases, or rather phrases, of social positioning that I, as a Black immigrant, should subsume. Aren't you fortunate to live in Australia? In the lucky country. You Americans, you're not really Black, you're American. Or my favorite, these are the quotes that I hear. Are where are you really from? I mean, really from, I'm asked. Yes, I capitalize all of this in that paper, indicating the volume and I italicize parts of this in the paper, noting the tone of voice. What if the theory I present is too thick like my hair, or not thick enough? Will my theory be story enough, like Stacey Holman Jones encourages? What if I'm not brave enough to explain my approach to research? Because this is research. This is my people's researching. What, or would it be because my immigrant status negates or somehow makes messy or dilutes my membership in the American racial and sexual caste systems discussed by the Combahee River Collective, a Black feminist statement? What if the sharing of the intersections of racism and sexism that Kimberly Crenshaw talked about and maps out, out corners and renders me? What if it corners and renders me silent, like Audre Lorde talks about and says I shouldn't be? I feel like I'm in a crooked room. That's how I felt when I first got here, and sometimes often do feel. I feel the crooked room say, I can't write a critical autoethnography. I feel the crooked room like a compactor, that Star Wars compactor, and I'm feeling fearful. But Toni Morrison reminds me that paralytic fear can be art. My fear of the crooked room is my art. I can hear my ancestors as I type. My grandpa says, "Hot don't matter no, hot don't matter no, Didi can write. Write, baby." Yes, that hot don't matter no, let me translate for those out there, means, oh, only the Almighty would have known. And that's in Gullah Geechee. My people, Gullah Geechee, off the coast of South Carolina, in the States, on Turtle Island. This piece is entitled, "The Crooked Room Has Me Tap Dancing." So, what's an academic like me to do when obligated to perform this scholarly persona? When pushed out on the very public stage, I find myself tap dancing for an audience, tap dancing, smiling, performing, and trying to guess what the audience, isn't this interesting right now? What the audience might be thinking. Are they reading me? I can't see them, or I can see them. Am I hypervisible? Am I visible? Invisible? How am I being viewed? Not just by students, but by faculty, co-lecturers, the IT staff overseeing online platforms, the faculty leaders who monitor my quality. And my quality. Is my message being heard? So are my intersections going to be used as weapons, landmines to tap round? I find myself tap dancing to avoid getting hurt because I can't control how others read me. I can't control how I might be objectified, dehumaned. So I found myself a wayfinder, trying to duck and weave round, being misshapen, misread, misstoried by some audience members, maybe even here. I hope not. I hope I'm in a safe space. In line, or rather online and in person. But I come along from a long line of storytellers, Black storytellers, Gullah Geechee storytellers. We out here, I been ya. Stories, whether set to music or framed in folk tales, stories as fuel for my family to move forward. Story and spoken word help me to find a way through. So I invite you right now, here, to come with me, to story alongside me, to be in my safe space, my place of being, an area of critical literacy, critical media literacy, because we're online, y'all. Understanding where I am the protagonist, where I want you to see that I have deep history. We're going back to enslaved peoples, the Sea Island enslaved peoples of South Carolina who spoke Gullah Geechee, a blending of West African languages and 17th century English. But I am not only a protagonist here, but I am in the future, a protagonist that I want you to see me in the future, not just tomorrow, not just next month, not just next year. I am an Afrofuturistic being, like the Black woman protagonist in Octavia Butler sci-fi novels, not to be erased from the futuristic world. I invite you to speak and to hear me speak. Not for you to speak, for me to speak, okay? To hear me speak from the mothership. Y'all, I'm on the mothership right now. I want you to hear me speak to my ancestors, to speak in metaphorical code in order to find understanding through story via my spoken word poetry that weaves in my mother's, father's language, Gullah Geechee, stitched in Black girl magic. Yes. And the storying shared in the visual creations that I'm just about to show you, the last bit, because we're almost done here, that represent my wayfinding, these quilted messages, digital quilted messages that I offer to you, to the other, those out there, in hopes that we And I'm talking to out there, those sitting at that intersection, I see you in hopes that we might find a way that lets us both fly. Now, I am just about to share with you one more or two more rather pieces of poetry that that I hope well that are indicators of what I experience within this space. And one of them is entitled Harps of Silence. This is based on Augusta. Oh, Augusta Savage's work, who is a Black sculptor, and she created a sculpture at the World Fair in the 1930s, 20s or 30s, excuse me, and this is based off of that. So we've got two pieces, only 2 minutes long, and then we'll wrap up. So let's share the screen, sharing screen, going to Harp of Silence. There we go.
How can I lift my voice? Let's sing a warning. How does that canary even mumble when muffled, when muzzled, when they, miners, mine the canary's mind? When they, miners, cast cage, cut throats deep? How does the canary profess that poisons strut cool, curl, then crawl, when their feathered faces are nodded prey? Their sliced screams sink in spoons stirred in a new southern drawl.
More here that I want to share, which is entitled Painting My Insides Blue. And then we will finish. I will finish and just share with you all a few last minute thoughts. Sharing screen, sharing, painting my insides blue. I must paint my insides hate 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 blue.
Shoo-la-loo.
I must paint my insides hate blue.
Shoo-la-loo.
I must paint my insides hate blue. I must paint my insides hate blue.
Shoo-la-loo.
I must paint my insides hate blue.
Shoo-la-loo. Shoo-la-loo.
I must paint
Shoo-la-loo.
my insides hate blue.
Shoo-la-loo. 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 Shoo-la-loo.
Okay. And in wrapping up and sort of decoding some of this, and I want to thank you all for being out there. And I see you, Maxine. I see you, Maxime. I'm so happy you're here, sister. Thank you for the shout outs on WhatsApp. the pieces that I shared, haints are ghost or bad things that might approach, and haint blue is the color that Black folks would paint their houses to keep the bad spirits from getting us. And often here I find myself painting my insides haint blue. And the last piece that was the Harp of Silence was based on that Augusta Savage piece or sculpture, and that was entitled The Harp, also entitled Lift Every Voice and Sing. And if you haven't heard that song, Lift Every Voice and Sing, it is the Black national anthem in the US. And often I find myself humming that as I am unfortunately feeling this sense of being muzzled or muffled within the academic space. But now, right now, I'm my own protagonist. Okay. And I love that I've been able to share these pieces with each of you because poetry is my safe space. Poetry is the way that my people have always been able to share their thoughts because we had to speak in coded languages. The Galagichi people had to speak encoded languages because they had that swirling together of West African language in 17th century English. So you couldn't say, you're speaking in English, but you had to say what you mean, but for the people around you that you didn't want to know what you were saying, to not know. And only those people that know knew. Boy, that's a little bit strange to say, isn't it, out loud? But I think that I have I've done my due, and so I'm going to invite Linda to come on in. Come on in. I'm the protagonist, though. Okay, so
Oh,
in the story, but that's okay.
so great. So great, Denise. Wow. Wow. Just mesmerizing. Just so, I just couldn't stop just writing notes and, but really just such a incredible performance, and it has so many dimensions to it. That's what I love about your work is it is kind of, it's that beautiful poetry and the rhythms of language that you just love to work with. You can hear that passion, and of course your history and identity and culture and the politics of all of that. And you know, that's it, you know, always feel very mindful that that's a big choice that you make, and that it is, you know, it's always a political choice. And I just want to recognize and say thank you for, you know, kind of feeling that this was a space that you could voice your politics and your experiences, and it's very important for white folks like me to hear it. And so thank you. It's a very important stuff. And I love that you interweave all these different kind of forms of expression. I'd love for you to perhaps say something about how important that kind of poetry making, performance making has been for you. I know you touched on it in what you were saying in terms of how it allows you to speak things that perhaps aren't so easy to do in other ways. It's obviously why musicians practice their art, and dancers and artists, of course. But in terms of that kind of performative storytelling and poetry making and kind of rhythmic speaking, how does it would be lovely to hear about how that is, why you love that so much.
Well, you know, I this way of languaging, you know, is a way of knowing, of creating a knowing, because poets are creators.
Mm.
Poets, uh, long ago, poets were viewed as people who were pushing those boundaries in ways that they, like a creator, creating their own space and saying, this is this. And so in tapping into that and in the creative writing, it's important that I language in ways that counter the hegemonic systems that, frankly, I feel crushed in. Um, I, but I still, I'm a survivor, and I've got to continue to show this and to be strong. I love that you had said choice, because quite recently my partner was saying the same thing, because I said, I just want to have I want to have folk that I get the opportunity to, I want to have a group of folks that I get to play with. I want to play in the sandbox with people. I want to dramatize them, alongside, and not feel that I'm the only one. And my partner said, look, this is the choice you have made. And at first I thought, oh, hey, wait a minute. Wait a minute. I'm not choosing for these structures to be, that I am actually in the, much like Ripley in Aliens, going in and going and finding that I'm tap dancing, okay, into a field of eggs, and then
Yeah.
I see the alien right there, okay, and I realized that I was in the schools before as a teacher, right? And then I became a teacher's teacher, a teacher, as my daughters would say, my mommy teaches teachers to teach, right? And here I am being told by these people amongst me that you are not teaching. This is not teaching. This is not research. And but I'm standing firm. I'm utilizing people that very often people will quote, but not quite get the grasp and understanding of what they have to offer. And I think that if I could, and I was just getting this last little bit. Hold on, just one second. And Audrey, not an Audrey quote, but a Bell Hooks quote. Thinking about this feeling of the importance of self-love, and that that we give children our sound self-love, they will be able to deal with whatever life puts before them. But I need to be kind to self. I need to see myself in ways that that say I can speak. The subaltern can speak, and this is the space that the oppressed can speak, and it needs to be, we keep talking about decolonizing stuff. My colleagues keep saying, oh, we got to decolonize this, we got to decolonize that, and I'm sharing with them as a person who was stolen from one land and put on another land as a tool to clear it and to help with that. I mean, that colonization, right? And now I'm in a new land, and I have to believe, that I am meant not just to survive, but that this way of being and the importance of sharing this knowing is a decolonizing way of thinking. And until that happens, and hopefully maybe some of my colleagues are on and get to see this, that they can see, this Black woman migrant sharing with them at the edgy intersections, that this is one way that we can shift our thinking. Yes, forward.
Absolutely. And it's, you know, the creative space, or the space of creativity, the space of practice, the spaces where practice takes place, and practitioners meet is a really vital space, I think. And I think it was, I'm not sure if I'm misquoting Eve Tuck, but I'm sure it was Eve Tuck who said decolonization is not a methodology. You know,
Or
it's
decolonization is not a metaphor. And you know, that's exactly what I shared with them. I said, you know, I think you might need to read, we need to go back and think about this paper. Decolonization is not a metaphor. And well, yeah, someone had a hot mic, and it came out, and excuse me, it came out, and they said, I heard, what the hell does that even mean? And I went, I was in the crooked room, so I just smiled and pretended like I didn't hear it. But I think that this is the space that we need to lean towards. The arts allow us to do this.
For sure. Listen, thanks, Denise. It's just been a fantastic conclusion to this first opening of Making Connection. Thank you so much for being part of it. It's just a wonderful, wonderful presentation and performance. And thank you to all of the audience. I'm like you, I can't see who's out there, but I know I've heard from people that they've come in and had a look around, and they've been and gone, you know, people, different time zones and all of that. So for those of folk who are out there, thank you so much. We are open again on Thursday. And again, a big shout out to Jeffrey Holdaway, who's been just an amazing person, just keeping it all going. So thank you, Jeffrey. Big thanks to you. And also very much thank you to Kate Stevenson from Dot Dot Studios, and my wonderful colleague Alice Longley, who just does the most incredible work, and just knows so many people, and just has this insane kind of network of amazing people. So thank you, Alice, for being a wonderful collaborator. And I hope you come back on Thursday and explore more of the show. And again, thank you, Denise, for your wonderful presentation.
It was my pleasure. And I want to echo those same thanks. This is so and such an exciting opportunity, exciting space. What an amazing creation. And I'm looking forward to Thursday. I'm going to be there.
Great. Thanks, Denise. Thanks, everyone.